The world loves extremes. We stare, we judge, we admire, without asking what it costs. Behind bodies that defy science and beauty standards lie stories no one wants to confront. Obsession disguised as discipline, pain mistaken for perfection, survival hidden behind a smile. These are not myths or internet legends. They are real people, real bodies, and real consequences. What you're about to see isn't about appearance. It's about what happens when the human body becomes a battlefield, and the world keeps watching. Eugenia Cooney, the girl who lived under a million eyes. Everyone watched her grow thinner. Almost no one knew how close she was to disappearing. Eugenia Cooney didn't chase fame the way most influencers do. She drifted into it, soft-spoken, polite, endlessly smiling, posting fashion hauls and makeup tutorials from her bedroom. At first, she looked like a shy girl having fun online. Then the comments changed. Viewers stopped talking about clothes and started pleading. Please eat, please get help, we're scared. Her body became the headline. Every video turned into a debate. Was she sick? Was she in denial? Was the internet enabling her or attacking her? While millions speculated, Eugenia stayed calm, cheerful, evasive. She thanked her fans. She deflected concern. And behind the screen, a dangerous silence grew. For years, her struggle with anorexia played out in real time, under unforgiving lights. Unlike most battles with eating disorders, hers was public. Viral clips, reaction videos, endless analysis of her weight, her bones, her smile. The world watched a young woman fade and argued over who was responsible. Then, suddenly, she vanished. In 2019, Eugenia stepped away from the internet. When she returned, she did something no one expected. She told the truth. Rehab, anorexia, fear, the loss of control. For the first time, the smile cracked. Her honesty shocked fans and critics alike. Some praised her bravery, others doubted her recovery. The spotlight never softened. Eugenia's story is still unfinished. That's what makes it unsettling. There is no clean ending, no triumphant montage, just a fragile human being trying to survive while the internet keeps watching. Her life forces an uncomfortable question. When suffering becomes content, does concern turn into consumption? And if everyone is watching, why is saving someone still so hard? Lizzie Velasquez, the woman the internet tried to erase. The doctors didn't think she would survive. Born weighing barely 2 pounds, unable to store body fat, Lizzie Velasquez entered the world already defying biology. But science wasn't what hurt her most. People were. As a child, Lizzie learned early that being different makes you a target. Strangers stared. Classmates whispered. Mirrors reflected a body the world refused to accept. Still, nothing prepared her for the moment she clicked on a YouTube video titled "The World's Ugliest Woman." Millions of views, thousands of comments, and the face on the screen was hers. That was the moment most people would disappear. Lizzie didn't. The cruelty was relentless. Memes, insults, laughter from behind screens. The internet reduced her to a punchline, a spectacle, a warning. But behind the headlines was a young woman making a choice. She could let the world define her, or she could speak back. So she did. Instead of hiding, Lizzie stepped into the spotlight on her own terms. She told her story about her rare condition, about the pain of being seen as less than human, about learning that worth has nothing to do with symmetry or size. Her voice was calm, but the message cut deep. Beauty is not what you see. It's what survives. Today, Lizzie stands on stages around the world as an author and motivational speaker, challenging everything society believes about appearance. The same world that once tried to erase her now listens. Her story isn't about overcoming ugliness. It's about exposing it. Because the real deformity was never her body. It was how easily people forgot there was a human being behind the screen. So the question remains, if kindness costs nothing, why was it so rare when she needed it most? Tom Staniford, the cyclist who refused to break. He was born into a body the world assumed would fail him. Diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder that prevents normal growth and fat storage, Tom Staniford looked impossibly fragile from the start. Thin limbs, narrow shoulders, a frame that seemed unfit for survival, let alone sport. Doctors explained limits. Strangers saw weakness. Expectations were quietly lowered before he ever had a chance to speak. But Tom didn't grow up dreaming of being protected. He dreamed of movement. On a bicycle, something changed. The fragility disappeared. The stairs faded. Speed replaced doubt. While his body lacked mass, it carried relentless endurance. Pedal by pedal, he found freedom, proof that strength doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Then came the crash, a brutal collision with a car that nearly ended everything. Bones shattered. Recovery was uncertain. For most people, it would have been the end of the story, the final confirmation that the body was right to be doubted. But Tom treated the wreckage not as a warning, but as a challenge. He rebuilt himself piece by piece, pain by pain, refusing to surrender the one place where he felt whole. Today, Tom Staniford rides not as a symbol of fragility, but as a contradiction to it. His story exposes a lie we tell ourselves, that survival belongs only to the strong-looking. Sometimes resilience wears a thin frame and keeps moving anyway. So the question isn't how much a body can endure, it's how much belief it can carry when everything says stop. Michelle Kopke, the woman who shrunk herself on purpose. No illness forced her hand. No accident changed her body. Michelle Kubke made a decision and then lived inside it. Born healthy in Germany, Michelle wasn't trying to survive. She was trying to transform. While the world chased filters and surgery, she chose something slower, harsher, and far more controversial. Corsets, steel-boned, tightly laced, worn day and night. At first it was curiosity, then discipline, then identity. Inch by inch, breath by breath, her waist began to disappear. To outsiders, it looked like self-destruction. 20 hours a day bound in fabric and metal, shallow breathing, restricted movement. A body reshaped not by time, but by obsession. Critics called it dangerous. Doctors warned of weakened muscles and internal strain. But Michelle didn't flinch. She insisted this wasn't pain, it was control. This was beauty chosen, not imposed. As her waist shrank from a natural 25 inches toward an almost unimaginable goal, the attention grew louder. Interviews, headlines, shock. But Michelle never claimed to be a role model. She wasn't selling a dream. She was defending a choice. In a world that demands conformity disguised as freedom, she chose a path no one could walk for her. Michelle Kubke's story unsettles because it blurs an uncomfortable line. Where does self-expression end and self-harm begin? When does devotion become danger? She doesn't offer answers. She offers a mirror. And maybe that's why her story lingers. Because it forces us to ask whether freedom is doing what's safe, or having the courage to live with the consequences of what you want. Kathy Jung, the woman who lived inside a corset. At first glance, it looks impossible. A waist barely wider than a human head. A silhouette that seems pulled from another century. Kathy Jung isn't a trick of light or digital illusion. She is real, and her body is the result of decades of deliberate transformation. Kathy didn't wake up one day wanting shock value. Her obsession began quietly, with a fascination for Victorian elegance, structured beauty, and the romance of restraint. While the modern world chased freedom through excess, she chose limitation. Corsets became her uniform, Steel, fabric, and discipline wrapped around her body every day, slowly rewriting its shape. This wasn't a phase, it was a lifelong commitment. Year after year, inch by inch, her waist shrank until it reached just 15 inches, earning her a Guinness World Record. Doctors warned her, critics mocked her, strangers questioned her sanity. But Kathy never claimed she was normal. She claimed she was intentional. This wasn't about pleasing the world. It was about mastering herself. Living inside a corset meant constant control. How she sat, how she breathed, how she moved through space. To some, it looked like a prison. To Kathy, it was devotion. A craft practiced over decades, not minutes. In an era obsessed with shortcuts, her body told a different story, one of patience, precision, and sacrifice. Kathy Jung's story makes people uncomfortable because it challenges a comforting belief that extremes are always accidents or illnesses. Sometimes, they're choices. And sometimes the most unsettling question isn't why would she do this? It's how far would we go if we were brave enough to want something completely our own? Ann Ward, the girl they laughed at until she won. When Ann Ward first stepped onto the stage of America's Next Top Model, the room didn't erupt in applause. It filled with whispers. At 6'2", painfully thin, with a waist that seemed unreal, Ann looked less like a conventional model and more like a sketch that escaped the page. Cameras zoomed in, judges hesitated, the audience stared. Too tall, too skinny, too strange. That was the verdict, spoken and unspoken. Online, it was worse. Screens became weapons. People laughed, speculated, dissected her body as if it were public property. Was she unhealthy? Was she unnatural? Was she even real? Ann heard it all, and she said almost nothing. No outbursts, no defenses, just silence, and the quiet weight of being misunderstood. But behind that silence was something dangerous. Focus. Ann didn't try to fix herself. She didn't shrink, soften, or apologize for the body she lived in. Instead, she learned how to use it. Every photo shoot became an act of defiance. Awkward angles turned into high fashion. Fragility transformed into presence. What once looked like weakness became her signature. Week by week, the laughter faded. Doubt turned into respect. And when Ann was crowned the winner of Cycle 15, it wasn't just a victory. It was a confrontation. Proof that beauty doesn't ask for permission. That the body the world mocks today might be the one it worships tomorrow. Ann Ward's story lingers because it exposes an ugly truth. The world doesn't hate difference. It hates difference that refuses to disappear. So the real question isn't why they doubted her. It's why it took winning for them to finally see her. Valeria Lukyanova, the woman who turned herself into a doll. They called her unreal, plastic, fake, a walking illusion built for clicks. When Valeria Lukyanova appeared online, the internet froze. Porcelain skin, glassy eyes, an impossibly tiny waist. Screens filled with accusations, Photoshop, surgery, lies. The world didn't ask who she was. It demanded to know how she was made. But Valeria never claimed to be natural in the way people wanted. She claimed intention. Apart from breast augmentation, she insisted her transformation came from discipline, strict diet, relentless training, and total control over her body. To her, becoming Barbie wasn't about pleasing men or feeding algorithms. It was a personal evolution, a form of self-authorship in a world obsessed with labeling women as either real or fake. The backlash was brutal, mockery disguised as curiosity, fascination mixed with cruelty. She was reduced to a spectacle, a meme, a debate topic, yet Valeria stood unmoved. She spoke of spirituality, identity, and the body as a canvas. While critics argued about authenticity, she focused on mastery, of image, of perception, of self. Her story unsettles because it removes a comforting excuse. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't illness. It was choice. And that raises a dangerous question. If someone consciously reshapes themselves into art, who has the right to say they've gone too far? Valeria Lukyanova didn't just become a living doll. She became a mirror, reflecting how threatened the world feels when a woman controls her own transformation. Jeremy Gillitzer, the model who disappeared in plain sight. From the outside, Jeremy Gillitzer looked untouchable. A sculpted jawline, an athletic frame, the kind of face magazines were built for. He was the image of control, discipline, perfection. Runways welcomed him. Cameras loved him. The world assumed he had won the genetic lottery. What no one saw was how desperately he was losing himself. Behind closed doors, Jeremy was fighting a war few associated with men, anorexia and bulimia. In an industry that rewards thinness but punishes weakness, he starved not for fame, but for worth. Meals became calculations, mirrors became judges. His once strong body slowly collapsed inward, shrinking under the pressure to stay desirable, stay flawless, stay enough. As the weight dropped, so did his sense of identity. At his lowest, Jeremy weighed less than a child. Bones replaced muscle. Energy vanished. Yet the compliments didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. The more he disappeared, the more the industry applauded. That contradiction became deadly. Validation masked danger. Silence became survival. Jeremy eventually spoke, quietly, honestly, about the damage behind the image. He wanted others to know that eating disorders don't have a gender and beauty doesn't protect you from destruction. But his voice came too late. His life ended not with scandal or spectacle, but with a haunting stillness. Jeremy Gillitzer's story forces a painful realization. Sometimes the most dangerous suffering is the kind everyone admires. And when perfection is rewarded, who notices when someone is slowly fading away? Jordan Barrett, the golden boy who paid for perfection. He was everything the fashion world dreams of. Sharp cheekbones, sun-bleached hair, a stare that could stop a runway mid-step. Jordan Barrett didn't chase fame. It hunted him down. Designers adored him. Cameras worshipped him. And the industry crowned him young, fast, and without mercy. From the outside, he was living the fantasy. Inside, his body was quietly disappearing. Always naturally slim, Jordan became the ideal in a world where thinness equals power. Bookings piled up, flights blurred together, call times crept earlier, meals became optional, sleep became rare. No one asked how he was holding up. They only asked if he could stay the same or get smaller. Discipline slowly crossed into damage, and the line vanished without warning. His body wasn't just working anymore, it was surviving. What makes Jordan's story different is that he spoke before it was too late. He admitted the pressure, the burnout, the fear of losing relevance in an industry that replaces faces overnight. He reclaimed his health, not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. Today, he still works, still stuns, but on his own terms. Jordan Barrett leaves behind an uncomfortable truth. Beauty is often praised most when it hurts the person wearing it. So the real question isn't why the industry took so much from him. It's why we call that price success. Valeria Levitin, the woman who became a living warning. She didn't disappear overnight. She was erased slowly, meal by meal, comment by comment. Valeria Levitin grew up under a microscope where love was conditional and perfection was demanded. As a child, her body was monitored, criticized, corrected. Thinness wasn't praised, it was required. What began as a desire to please became a lesson learned too well. To be worthy, she had to be smaller. Over time, control turned into captivity. Food became fear. Mirrors became enemies. Her weight dropped to levels that shocked even doctors, but the real damage was invisible. Valeria wasn't chasing beauty. She was chasing approval that never arrived. Her body became skeletal, fragile, haunting. Yet inside, she was still there, trapped and exhausted. The world stared at the numbers. Few asked about the voice that taught her to disappear. What makes Valeria's story different is what came next. She didn't stay silent. Instead of hiding, she stepped forward, using her own body as a warning. She spoke to young girls, to classrooms, to anyone who would listen. "This is not beauty," she said. "This is not control. This is what happens when worth is measured in inches." Valeria Levitin forces us to confront a brutal truth. Eating disorders are rarely about food. They are about voices we inherit and the ones we never learn to silence. So the question remains, how many lives are shrinking right now just trying to be enough for someone else? Maria Campbell and Katie Campbell, the twins who tried to stop time. They were identical in every way that mattered. Same face, same voice, same childhood reflected back at them like a mirror that never cracked. Maria and Katie Campbell weren't just sisters. They were each other's anchor. And when the world began to pull them toward adulthood, they made a decision that stunned everyone watching. They would not grow up, not emotionally, not physically, not at all. What followed wasn't vanity, it was fear. Fear of change, fear of separation, fear of becoming strangers to one another. Together they began to starve themselves, not because they hated their bodies, but because they loved what those bodies represented: sameness, innocence, control. As their weight dropped, their frames shrank into something almost childlike. Doctors warned of permanent damage. The public reacted with confusion and horror. But Maria and Katie remained united, unmoved. In their world, hunger was safer than change. Side by side, they built a reality where time stood still. But stillness came at a cost. Their health deteriorated, their bodies weakened, and the line between protection and self-destruction blurred beyond recognition. What the world saw as a tragedy, they saw as preservation. A final stand against a future they weren't ready to face. Their story leaves behind a chilling question. How far would you go to stay who you are? And when does holding on become the very thing that destroys you? Because Maria and Katie Campbell didn't just refuse to grow up, they exposed a fear many feel but never dare to name, the terror of becoming someone you no longer recognize. Christian Bale, the man who starved for art. When Christian Bale walked onto the set of The Machinist, even the crew barely recognized him. His body looked hollowed out, ribs sharp beneath translucent skin, eyes sunken with exhaustion. He had lost more than 60 pounds, surviving on black coffee, an apple, and a can of tuna a day. Hollywood was stunned. Some called it dedication, others called it madness. Bale called it truth. This wasn't a publicity stunt. It was obsession. Bale believed the character demanded disappearance, so he erased himself. Hunger became routine. Weakness became normal. His body wasn't just acting, it was suffering. And the most dangerous part? The praise. Applause drowned out concern. The industry rewarded the damage, blurring the line between commitment and self-destruction. Then came the reversal. Months later, Bale reappeared as Batman, muscular, powerful, reborn. The transformation shocked the world again. But beneath the spectacle was a warning few wanted to hear. How far is too far for art? When does discipline turn into harm? Bale survived the extremes, but his story exposes a darker truth. When pain is applauded, obsession is mistaken for greatness. And sometimes the most celebrated performances come dangerously close to costing everything. Ruth Lujan, the porcelain body with an iron will. At first glance, Ruth Lujan looks like she might shatter. Her frame is delicate, almost unreal, as if her bones were made of glass instead of strength. Every movement carries risk. Every fall could mean disaster. Born with a rare condition that leaves her body painfully fragile, Ruth grew up surrounded by warnings. Don't move too fast, don't lift that, be careful. The world treated her like something that needed to be wrapped and stored away. But Ruth refused to live like a warning label. Instead of shrinking from life, she chose something radical: control. Corsets became her armor. Not for fashion, not for shock, for survival. The tightly laced fabric supported her fragile body, held her spine, protected her from collapse. Over time, her waist narrowed to an extreme measurement, one that stunned the public and invited endless judgment. Outsiders saw obsession. Ruth saw stability. Living inside a corset meant living inside discipline, breath by breath, step by step. While critics debated whether she was harming herself, Ruth was quietly staying alive on her own terms. She didn't ask for admiration. She didn't ask for pity. She asked for the right to exist without fear. Ruth Lujan's story forces an uncomfortable truth into the light. Sometimes the tools we use to survive look dangerous to those who've never needed them. Fragility and strength can live in the same body. And sometimes survival isn't loud or heroic. Sometimes it's laced tight, wrapped in steel and silk, and held together by a will the world never expected. Abby Solomon, the girl whose body never followed the rules. Abby Solomon was born into a body that refused to grow the way it was supposed to. While other children gained weight, filled out, blended in, Abby stayed fragile. Thin limbs, delicate skin, eyes that seemed too large for her face. Doctors gave it a name, a rare genetic condition so uncommon it offered no roadmap, no promises. From the start, her body marked her as different, and the world noticed before she ever had a chance to explain. Growing up meant living under stares. Strangers whispered, classmates asked questions that hurt more than they helped. Mirrors reflected a body Abby never asked for, one that felt like it belonged to someone much younger, much weaker. But the hardest part wasn't physical, it was isolation. Being different turned ordinary moments into quiet battles, forcing her to grow up emotionally long before her body ever could. Yet Abby refused to disappear. Instead of hiding, she chose visibility. Through photos, interviews, and honesty, she invited the world to look again, this time with understanding. She showed that her condition didn't make her less human, less capable, or less worthy. It made her resilient in ways most people never have to be. Abby Solomon's story challenges a dangerous assumption that strength must look a certain way. Sometimes it looks like a girl who wakes up every day in a body that defies biology and still shows up. So ask yourself, if courage isn't measured by size or appearance, how many strong people have we been overlooking simply because they didn't fit the frame? Dita Von Teese, the woman who refused to shrink for the world. She didn't walk onto the stage, she emerged. Wrapped in silk, diamonds, and deliberate mystery, Dita Von Teese looked like a vision torn from another century. At a time when burlesque was dismissed as outdated and excessive, she resurrected it, slowly, defiantly, unapologetically. The world saw glamour. Few understood the rebellion stitched into every movement. Dita's body became part of the spectacle, but never the object. Her impossibly slender waist and porcelain presence weren't built to please trends or algorithms. They were curated, controlled, claimed. In an industry obsessed with youth and casual exposure, she chose precision and restraint. Every performance was a declaration. Femininity can be powerful without being accessible, sensual without being consumed. While others were told to tone it down, Dita turned it up and made the world adjust. Off stage, she shattered expectations even further. She spoke openly about discipline, self-authorship, and the right to define beauty on one's own terms, not as rebellion for attention, but as survival for the self. Dita didn't sell fantasy. She became it on her own terms, in a culture that punishes women for taking control of their image. Her story lingers because it exposes a quiet truth. Sometimes power doesn't come from changing your body. It comes from refusing to explain it. And when a woman decides to belong only to herself, the world never quite knows where to place her. Isabel Caro, the face that refused to look away. When Isabel Caro stepped in front of the camera, the world recoiled. Her body was shockingly thin, bones visible beneath fragile skin, a living image most people preferred not to see. But Isabel didn't flinch. She didn't hide. She stood still and let the lens capture what anorexia really looks like, without filters, without mercy. In a culture obsessed with perfection, she offered something radical: truth. Diagnosed with severe anorexia at just 13, Isabel spent years trapped in a body that felt like a prison and a mind that wouldn't let her escape. Hunger wasn't a choice. It was a command. Her weight dropped to dangerous levels, her strength faded, and isolation closed in. Yet instead of disappearing, she chose visibility. In 2007, she became the face of an anti-anorexia campaign in Italy. Her emaciated frame paired with two words that stunned the world: no anorexia. It wasn't beauty. It was a warning. Behind that image was a young woman telling her story about shame, fear, and the lie that eating disorders are about vanity. Isabel spoke openly, even when it cost her. She wanted people to understand that anorexia kills quietly, convincingly, and without discrimination. Her courage made people uncomfortable, and that was the point. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was demanding awareness. Isabel Caro passed away in 2010, but her image still haunts the world she confronted. She left behind more than a photograph. She left a question we still struggle to answer. If the truth is this painful to look at, why do we keep turning away? Cristina Cariagina, the girl who almost vanished. At first, people didn't believe she was real. Cristina Cariagina looked like a shadow, bones pressing against skin, a body so light it seemed unfinished. Photos of her spread across the internet, labeled impossible, fake, exaggerated. But Cristina wasn't an illusion. She was a 14-kilogram reality, standing at the edge of life while the world argued about what it was seeing. Behind the shock lived a quieter horror. Cristina didn't wake up wanting to disappear. Anorexia arrived disguised as control, discipline, perfection. A promise that if she could master her body, she could master everything else. Meals turned into enemies. Thoughts turned into commands. With every pound lost, something else slipped away: energy, relationships, time. Her body grew fragile, but the real damage stayed hidden, locked inside a mind at war with itself. What makes Cristina's story unbearable is not how thin she became, but how close she came to being lost without anyone noticing in time. Seeking help meant fighting fear, shame, and a voice that insisted she didn't deserve recovery. Yet she tried. Quietly, reluctantly, bravely. Her existence forces a question we don't like to ask. How many people are praised for their control while they're slowly disappearing? Cristina Cariagina is not a spectacle. She is a warning. And if her body makes us uncomfortable, maybe that's because it reflects something we've learned to ignore for far too long.